Yesterday, we talked about Matt Lloyd possibly being the front runner for the Chicago Bulls exec position. We now know the 3 finalists that all will be getting second interviews with the Chicago Bulls. They've narrowed it down to 3. So yeah, the pressure's on. Matt Lloyd, Dennis Lindsey, Bryson Graham, 3 very different paths for the Chicago Bulls franchise. But the big question is simple. Who's really the front runner, and what does it mean for the future of the team? We're also going to look at the draft profile of Caleb Wilson and dive into the mailbag. All that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content today, y'all. And man, we got a great many things to talk about. So it seems like the Chicago Bulls have narrowed down their list. So over the last week, which, me and a lot of other people were questioning, how quickly are the Chicago Bulls doing this? They've met virtually with all their candidates. They've now moved over to the final round of interviews, and that includes Matt Lloyd, Dennis Lindsey, and Bryson Graham, all being the finalists for that situation. And reportedly right now, Matt Lloyd is still the favorite for the position, but you look at all these guys, and the thing that stood out about all of them, even when we were talking about the individual candidates, is that they've all been really good at building teams. They're all, having that same moniker as drafting really well, right? And I think that's really good when you come down to it. We've already talked heavily about Matt Lloyd. We'll talk about him a little bit more here, right? But when you look at Bryson Graham of the Atlanta Hawks, this is the guy that's been at his position the fewest, right? Like the lowest amount of time. And, he's still a guy that is very promising when it all comes down to it. I think when you look at him in his case, it comes down to he's only been in Atlanta a few seasons, right? But even with him only being there a few seasons, like he's done some of the most important things. When you look at the trade of Trae Young, right? Getting to kill Alexander Walker in there, building around Jalen Johnson, bringing in Dyson Daniels, like all that type of stuff. I mean, Bryson Graham also, I think, drafted Dyson Daniels, and then, he's now has him back in Atlanta. So those are things that all look good for him. Those are all things that he's done this pretty well in regards to that. He's looked at as a guy that has a really, nice ability to have relationships around the league, has strong work ethic, but he is considered a lot, and like a lot of these guys, an elite talent evaluation, right? And that goes back to when he was the director of college scouting for the Pelicans from 2017 to 2019. Now, the thing with him is the fact that he has drafted some really good players. Trey Murphy III was drafted by him. Herb Jones was drafted by him. Jose Alvarado, Najee Marshall, Jordan Hawkins, right? These are players that were all drafted by him. One of the things of fleecing the New Orleans Pelicans in the Derek Queen trade, even though they did get the player that they wanted, now the Hawks have that extra draft pick, which shows a level of aggression that we haven't seen from a prior front office in there. So, you look at the people that he's worked for. He's worked for David Griffin out with the Pelicans. He now works in Atlanta and stuff like that. He has a lot of respect around the league as well when it comes down to it. So I think when you come into it, he's seen Jalen Johnson, lead into an all-star, secure a playoff spot. The restructuring of that roster around Jalen Johnson, he's really been the guy that's head of when it comes down to it. And so I like that. And so when you look at his drafting history, that he did with the Pelicans, which, they have some really good players down there with the Pelicans. And, then, even though they haven't, necessarily pushed it forward like they wanted to, mainly because of Zion's injury and things like that. But even Bryson Graham really stands out. Dennis Lindsey of Detroit is one that a lot of people do like in regards to this as well. If it's not the Matt Lloyd of it all, right? He's another guy that's been, in multiple positions. And I think all these guys at different times have either been heads of scouting or player development, which are two things that the Bulls have really lacked at over the course of the last 6 years under Arturas Karnisovas. And so, you have those guys that comes in there, and he's another guy. When you look up the things that he does well, he's considered elite at drafting and player acquisition, right? Analytical approach to it. One of his names to fame is that he was somebody who noticed it early on Donovan Mitchell and who he could become, even though he didn't draft that, right? He was a guy that is in on Derek Lively early as well. You look at the acquisition of, trading Rudy Gobert, the draft night acquisition of trading Rudy Gobert, drafting, Donovan Mitchell to that team. So, he's played a key role in some of those things. And he has a huge analytical approach to it. Now, you guys know I'm an analytics guy, right? I love advanced analytics. I love numbers, throw them all at me. But this is a guy that he's known for using advanced analytics and data to drive roster decisions. But he doesn't just rely on that, right? He goes off gut feeling. He goes off, actual reports, scouting reports, things like that. But this is a guy who's built playoff contenders. You look at how he built that Utah Jazz team when it had Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, and how they were in the playoffs, all the time when it came down to that. Bringing in complementary players like Mike Conley, figuring out when it comes down to that. He's also a guy that's really good at roster building. And that's something that the Bulls have to excel at, I feel like, over this next phase, is you have to excel at roster building, drafting, and player acquisition. And those are all things that Dennis Allen has reportedly been an expert at over the course of his time in the NBA. And so that's really important, right? And then you look at the last guy, Matt Lloyd of the Minnesota Timberwolves, a guy that we've all covered here, pretty extensively. And, he's the one guy that has experience with the Chicago Bulls organization. And I've said it before, whether we agree with it, whether we disagree with it, this ownership group is such a unique ownership group that anybody who has experience, even seeing how the Reinsdorfs have been handled right, understanding how you have to move and maneuver with the limitations that, the Reinsdorfs put on the team. The fact that for the Bulls, right, a team that's never really been a big free agent acquisition despite being in one of the biggest markets, it's just the fact that you always have to draft your best players, and you have to really get value out of every single draft. And Matt Lloyd is a guy that can do that. He is an amazing scout when it comes down to it, right? He is known as the scout that triple digits in games per season and focuses heavily on in-person evaluation as well as using the analytics part of it as well. So you're talking about a guy who personally has scouted over 100 players in person himself before. That's through traveling, hard work, all the type of stuff. He started off as a guy in 1994, as an unpaid intern for the Chicago Bulls, gaining that experience all the way up, working under Jerry Krause, working under John Paxson, working under Tim Connolly, right? There's a guy that's worked under some really big names and have had success doing that as well, right? You look at the early 2000 Bulls, where a lot of us have our fondness at. He was the guy that was in charge of college scouting around that time. And so, also learning under Tim Connolly. One of the biggest negatives about him is the fact that, much like, AK's that he's the second guy to Tim Connolly. But I do think with the Bulls having a little bit more familiarity with him, knowing him since he was a young man up until where he is now, right, that it makes sense that he's the finalist. Right now, that he is a guarantee or the favorite. I keep saying that. And so even with him being the favorite, it doesn't mean that he's guaranteed to get the position, right? It doesn't mean that necessarily. It just means that he may have a leg up on these other guys. But the fact that the Bulls have 3 interviews with these finalists, it does mean that things are progressing along. I've talked a lot about before. It's important that we get this person in place before May 10th. That is the hard deadline by then. You have to have this in place by then. If you don't, you're wasting your time. So I think that you look at it, Dennis Lindsey's probably the most proven guy on this list, right? By building those Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell Jazz teams, he's probably the guy that you have to look at and say he is the most experienced. Matt Lloyd has maybe the lean there because he's been here before. And then Bryson Graham, the fact that he's moved into being a finalist, I don't think was expected. He's one of the newest guys on his current position. But I think overall, you still have to look at him, and he's made a really strong impression reportedly internally, with the interviews that he did have, the virtual interview he did have with the Bulls. Apparently, he's really made an impression on the Reinsdorfs. Take that for what you will. Some people may say that if you make a strong impression with the Reinsdorfs, maybe that's a negative. But hey, overall, I think the Bulls are progressing in the right direction, and they're making moves in the right direction. The question now has to become about which guy do you lock in on? These interviews are expected to happen over this week, which means that if they happen by the end of the week, we are in the beginning of May, which leaves you a week to get acclimated, move over. All these guys are on, teams as well that are still battling in the playoffs. So you have that part of it too that you're worried about. So, you have things that you have to progress along. But, as some of these teams get eliminated in the first round, that could be the last kind of push that the Bulls need to go ahead and solidify this job, get these guys in here and keep us moving forward. So as it stands right now, Jake Fisher did say this. He said that Matt Lloyd is the prime target by the Chicago Bulls. He did mention John Paxson's involvement in the search as senior advisor and the prior connection that John Paxson had with Matt Lloyd as well during their time together. He spent 13 seasons with the Bulls. Paxson was here for basically the majority of that time as well, a large chunk of that time also. So it just seems like this is where the Bulls are going to go. So I'm not going to say that Matt Lloyd is a lock, right? But it does seem like the Bulls, if they want Matt Lloyd, they will be able to lock him in before anything as far as the draft combine or anything like that. And, we'll see what happens when it comes down to it. So overall, those are your finalists for the Bulls exec position that we've been talking about and wondering what's going to happen with these guys for so long. And we could get an answer as soon as this week. We could get an answer this week of what's going to happen for the Chicago Bulls and who is going to be the next guy leading that new era for the Chicago Bulls. Let me know how you feel about these guys down below, which is your favorite guy to come out of this. Let me know what you guys think about that down below. With that said, we've been doing draft profiles, right? And we started with the top 4, right? This is where we started going kind of into the detail with videos and stuff like that. Today, it's time to talk about Caleb Wilson, right? This is one of my favorite guys. If the Bulls don't land in the top 2, and in my personal opinion, the top 2, Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, right? If you're at 2, you take whichever one of those guys didn't get taken at number 1. That's just the way I stand about it. I heard a lot of you guys in regard to the work acumen and ethic of Darren Peterson and being concerned with him sitting and taking games off, and that's a valid concern. A guy that I've always liked in this draft is Caleb Wilson. Now, Caleb Wilson does feel more like an AK pick. We don't know what is going to happen here, but let's not act like Caleb Wilson also isn't a dog, averaging 18 points per game. This guy that's 6'10", 215 pounds. And when you look at Caleb Wilson, the thing that you just stands out at is he's just the modern day forward. Now, the biggest concern about him as far as, with the things that he does best is still offense. Like his 3-point shooting is rough right now. Now, Matas Buzelis has turned himself into a decent enough 3-point shooter. So maybe there's hope that the Bulls with their player development department, yes, Peter Patton isn't there anymore. We all know we ain't got to complain about that no more. But they still have a player development department. And hopefully that they can get something out of that with the shooting there for Caleb Wilson and make it make a little bit more sense. And if they are, great. No harm, no foul when it comes down to that, right? But you're still looking at a guy like Caleb Wilson and saying, hey, the upside that he brings defensively, the modern day forward that can play in transition, he can guard probably 4 positions at the next level. You talk about bringing in a switchable defender like that. Listen, that's all stuff that I love coming down to it. I think when you look at having a forward duo of him and Matas Buzelis, you have some traditional size, you have some traditional length. Matas Buzelis has turned himself into a solid 3-point shooter, so that's there. Caleb Wilson was a 25% 3-point shooter, only taking one of those per game, but he averaged over a steal and a half per game, over a block and a half per game, 9.4 rebounds per game as well, and he was able to average 19.8, so almost 20 points per game off 12 shots, shooting 57% from the field. Offensively, that jump shot, you're going to be waiting on that to develop a little bit, but I still think that, the form on it's decent, right? So you get him with the right shooting coach, that's really good. Matt Bobcat, a draft expert, said this in regards to him. In a draft class loaded with talent and upside, Caleb Wilson belongs in the same conversation as anybody. He has that kind of potential. And the athleticism that he has is the thing that you stand out about him. He's able to put pressure on the rim on the offensive side of the ball. His value in transition is huge, so it kind of fits in with the mold and the play style that the Bulls have been playing. But then again, that's going to change some with the new coach as well. The versatility that he brings defensively, you can build a defensive system around him because of the way that you're able to have him guard the best player. Regardless if it's on the perimeter or it's in the post, he's going to be able to do that. He's going to have to put on some weight, of course, at the next level. You can say a lot of that in regards to all of these guys, right? But I think that, his ability to put the ball on the floor, face up some in that mid-post. Again, thank God Billy Donovan's gone for that, so you can develop his mid-range game. But that shooting consistency is a bit of a concern there. The discipline defensively is a bit of a concern there because he does have times where he does gamble, but he is going to start off your offense in the transition a lot with that ability as well. He just has to polish off his offensive game. He does that. I think it really works for him. He has that high-level elite athleticism as a forward, the defensive versatility, the explosiveness. He has so much to his game. He'd be a fun player in the Chicago Bulls uniform, at least in my opinion. So, let's see what happens with regards to that. We got rid of Tar Hill. Let's get another one back. So let me know what you guys feel about Caleb Wilson, and where do you have him ranked in the players expected to go in that top 4, right? Caleb Wilson, Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsta. Who do you have in regards to those guys that are towards the top of your board? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. With that said, we got a couple of voicemails from the weekend that I want to get into. Clear the overflow, start a new week fresh. This one's from AI Kid.
Yo, what's up, Haize? Shot Boy Central. This AI Kid. I wanted to touch on that guy that y'all had up in the as far as the first, second, 15th pick. What was his name? Isaiah Evans. I like that guy. I like him, and I think he's a great option if we don't get Wagler. But the only reason I say we could get Wagler is because I'm plotting on the Bulls trying to trade some picks to get him. And then that had me thinking, like, is he that good? Like, we gonna trade one of the deepest picks, like one of the deepest drafts, we gonna trade those picks for somebody? Like, I don't know. So I think we got a lot of opportunities, and I think we should I think we could get him in the second round, but I don't know, man. You don't want to take chances and then your pick gets taken. But I also wanted to put out what was his name? Juke Harris out of Wake Forest. I think he could shoot, man. He could shoot. But it's just gonna take a little more practice. But he remind me more of a Dalen Terry, a raw talent. But I know Dalen Terry was a failed project, but we could always, you feel me, have that type of energy coming off the bench. And I think with these type of players, do we try to build a team around them? Because I was wondering, like, how could the Bulls fire people without a replacement? It's like people don't move like that. And then it had me thinking, what did we get for Zach LaVine and the DeMar DeRozan trades? And how that was BS. So I understand, like, AK didn't make the best moves, but he still was making smart moves in a way. And I like the analysis mode we was going through, so I think he could still be in our front office, just not running. You feel me? Because I think we need more educated people. I think he was forced out because all we needed was to bring depth around the team we had. We needed a superstar, but we couldn't bring the superstar in knowing he was going to have to sign Kobe and Ayo. But that's neither here nor there. I do wonder, though, what would you say, like, Ayo is next to Giddey? Like, can we try to make that work? Can we re-sign him in the offseason? Or Kobe? Like, how you think that might work? Also, what's that guy? Evans, and then a guy said the dude from Chicago, the center from Chicago, and Juke Harris from Wake Forest. I see them as those, like, our second-round picks. I really don't feel high on Amara no more, so let me know what you think about it.
Isaiah Evans would be nice. You guys know I love Keaton Wagler. I love Keaton Wagler's game. And I've seen some fans that aren't Bulls fans that aren't necessarily high on Keaton Wagler. It is what it is. It's a draft. Everybody's going to have their difference of opinions on what prospect to go win and all that type of stuff. But I think if you mentioned it, right? The Bulls could be aggressive. We got to see what the new GM's thought process is, right? Like, Dalen Terry was a failed project, yeah, right? But I think if you're talking about a Dalen Terry level project in the second round, that's a little bit different, right? Than where Dalen Terry was picked at and who was still left on the board, a.k.a. Walker Kessler, when Dalen Terry was taken, right? So I want to be against taking a project in the second round. I think, it makes some sense if that's where you're going to go there, right? So we're going to see. As far as the Ayo thing, your question on if Ayo could have worked next to Josh Giddey, yeah, sure. He could have worked next to Josh Giddey. I think his ability, how he grew as an off-ball player, the defense next to Josh Giddey, all those things were things that could absolutely stand out and make him a good fit with Josh Giddey. But the woulda, coulda, shoulda. We'll see. You'll see what happens in the offseason. I'm not putting my eggs in the Ayo Dosunmu returns in the offseason basket, but I'm not mad at Bulls fans that do that either. Like, Bulls fans want Ayo back. He was a Bull. He was from the city. So it makes sense. I'm never going to knock anybody for that. I don't think it's likely to happen. But all right, let's get into this next voicemail, the last one for today. This one's from Boozella's Fan.
What's good, Haize? It's your boy Boozella's Fan. First, just want to send love as always. I got a couple subjects to touch on for you real quick. Interested to hear your thoughts. First, I really like the direction the Bulls are going in with the full reset. I'm big on the upside at 9 with someone like Matt Brown Jr. just because of the shot creation, off dribble scoring, and how you can play both like on and off the ball next to Gideon Modest long term. At 15, I'm fully with you on Chris Sinak. I think having a defensive anchor, legit rim protection, vertical spacing is going to balance everything out for a young core. I also wanted to throw out some early names in case the new front office moves off Giddey, like you mentioned, and we end up bad enough to land a top 4 guy for that next draft. It's super early, but there's guys like Stefan Joksimovic, I believe that's how you say his name. He is 6'6" playmaking guard from, I think, Slovenia, already putting up like 13 a game at U18 Eurobasket. He's a dribble pass shoot versatility type of guy. He can run the pick and roll, make advanced reads. I see him maybe hitting like a Halliburton type big guard, if everything pops, maybe a high level connector like DeLon Wright. You know what I'm saying? Depending on how the scoring develops, team around him, of course. But even beyond him, you got like Mika Marinin, 6'10", modern forward, mobile, stretch the floor, attack closeouts. He can protect the rim at a high level. I can see him some like a Triple J or Lurie type impact if it all comes together. Maybe still like a valuable stretch rotation piece. And I know this rebuild going to take a couple of years, but there's real high-end talent coming in, so it's no rush. But, yeah, I'm cool being patient if we build the right way. Appreciate your time, brother. Would love to hear your thoughts. And, again, I know it's super early. I know you're not focused on it, but kind of want to throw something on your radar. So when we get, 1 or 2 years down, there were some glimpse of these things. But, yeah, thank you for your time, Haize. Peace.
Matt Brown and Chris Sinak Jr., it wouldn't be a bad draft at 9 and 15. I think you walk away with 2 solid players at that position. Like I've said before, Chris Sinak Jr. has lottery level upside. And I really do believe that if you work out some of the more kinks and negatives of his game, I wouldn't be surprised if we look back on it and we say he's one of the best bigs to come out of this draft overall. He has the defensive ability. He has the offensive ability as a modern day center and big. He has to add some weight on, but I think that he has all of those things, so I wouldn't be mad at him either. I think overall what you're looking for is that the Bulls, like, I'm not going to say they can't fuck this up, right? And hopefully with the new GM, we have a renewed faith, right? Especially with all these guys being really good draft experts and scouters, right? But I think overall, like, you got to look at this and say that there's a really good chance in this draft the Bulls can walk away with 2 picks in the top 20, with 2 picks that actually are going to be part of the Chicago Bulls' future. No ifs, ands, or buts. When you look at the board, there's a lot of talent that's there on this board. And, we'll see. And Chris Sinak Jr. is one of my favorite targets at number 15, which means it's probably not going to happen, but you can hold out some hope, and let's see if the Bulls can get it done. But that's going to do it for today, man. Thank you guys for leaving those voicemails. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in so much to this episode, man. This is going to be a fun one, and we're going to see what happens for the Chicago Bulls, in this offseason, because everything is in front of them, and they got everything in front of them. They're getting closer and closer to making a major decision with their front office, and how everything follows after that is going to be really important. So, as always, I want to hear from you guys. How do you feel about everything that we covered today? Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload, especially in the offseason, because we cooking. You guys can follow us at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.